pleasant afternoon to you, Guyana. It is Friday, the 9th of July, 2021, and I wish to take this opportunity in welcoming you to yet another edition of Facing the Nation with the Leader of the Opposition. I also want to say that we're coming live from CNN Channel 6 here in the studio. You can also follow us live on CNS Channel 6 Facebook, and also we are coming by way of 105.1 FM radio here in the studio. I am Annette Ferguson. On today's program, we will be discussing regional updates with specific focus on Demerara Mahaica region, commonly known to many of us as Region Number 4. Joining the conversation with me today is my guest, Mr. Daniel Seeram, who is the regional chairman for the Demerara Mahaica region. Mr. Seeram is one of the new faces, appeared as a candidate on the APNU list of candidates for the March 2nd, 2020 elections. After the general elections, his name was extracted from the list of candidates to serve as the chairman of the Demerara Mahaica region. Mr. Seeram, a pleasant afternoon to you and a warm welcome to you to this program, Facing the Nation with the Leader of the Opposition. So you can give your opening remarks.
Thank you, Honorable Member. The Honorable Annette Ferguson, Opposition Member of Parliament. It's a privilege to be here with you this afternoon, and good afternoon also to our viewers and our listeners. It's always a pleasure to engage the public and to answer questions and also update the public as to the development of the Demerara Mahaica region. It's my first time here on your show.
Yes.
We've been watching your show as the weeks roll by, yourself and Chris. Great stuff here, and I'm glad to have an input. I'm glad to be invited. I'm honored to be invited, and I look forward that we'll have fruitful discussions in order for us to update the public on the issues, the development in the Demerara Mahaica region. Just before we go on, though, we all started at the Regional Democratic Council as councillors.
Yes.
So when we were extracted first as councillors, and then we had a special elections.
Oh yes,
for the chair.
And the
So
vice chair.
just to add that in, we're first and foremost we're all councillors of the RDC, and then we elevated after an elections and swearing in by the president of the country to the positions of chairman and regional vice chairman.
Okay, good. Thank you very much for the extra.
Just a little understanding.
No trouble.
I find that everywhere we go, Ms. Ferguson, we have persons that are not so very knowledgeable of the regional governance system. And being in the regional government system, it's always a pleasure for me to enlighten and inform. And I use all of the forums that we have here.
Yes.
In Guyana, just to remind our viewers and listeners, we have 3 tiers of government that operate. We have the central government, which is the president and his cabinet. Then we have the regional government, which would be the regional chairpersons along with their councils. And then we have the local government, which would be our local authority areas, inclusive. These are your municipalities, the neighborhood development democratic council, and the community development councils also there, right? Also being a part of those, we have other local authority areas, for example, the indigenous villages, right, which are governed also by Tushao and their council, their village councils. So when we look at Guyana, this wasn't invented yesterday. The framers of our constitution, right, and I must say that this is a vision also of the late great LFS Burnham in seeing that all tiers of government work cohesive to bring further development. While the central government is looking after the issues nationally, and so we find more the regional governance actually being the engine moving forward policies and implementing them, having them properly conducted. And then we have the local authority area, the local governance area, in which those folks now, they do some of the hardest jobs in terms of direct interface with the people to report of what is going on the ground. Right? And if I may take this time, those are the feedback that we need in terms of the regional governance, because when we are doing our budget, the feedback that we get from the local authority areas, the municipalities, the NDCs, and the CDCs, this is what we take into consideration while preparing our budgets at the levels of the regional democratic councils to further it to the central government to be read in the National Assembly to be passed. Okay. So all representatives at all levels, yes, we encourage them to go out into their various, whether it be the regions, whether it be their constituencies, the NDC areas, the municipalities, and get this meaningful feedback, consult with the persons on the ground. And the Demerara Mahaiku region, we're very strict on this, especially under our tenure in office currently, that we must have meaningful consultation with the residents, with all regional stakeholders, and then we have informed decisions being made. And these decisions are also taken into consideration with the national policies that are there. And that is why we have a bit more cohesion. Once all of the stakeholders understand their role, all tiers of government understand their role, and then we bring forward the development in order to serve the people more adequately.
Okay, thank you very much, Daniel, for that brief explanation on how the three different tiers of governance work. Before we get into the actual or the crux of today's discussion, I want to take probably another 5 minutes, 5 to 6 minutes thereabout, for you to share who Daniel Seeram is. So my first question to you, and you can share with our viewers, who is Daniel Seeram?
Well, my name is Daniel Seeram. I was born right here in our nation's capital, Georgetown. I hail from the community, the village of Alexander Village right here. I would have done all of my schooling, pretty much all of my schooling up to the secondary tier of education here locally. And then I would have joined our military, in which I would have served for 12 years honorably, in which they would have molded the individual you see here in front of you. I do have a passion to serve. I have a passion to develop this nation way beyond what we see here today. Politics, I was always drawn closely to it. I was always ready to listen to the concerns of anybody that would have come around. It's a privilege to me to be around colleagues that I have now, my members of parliament, colleagues and comrades, and other persons who sit at tables to make decisions. The style of leadership that I personally bring to the table is more in terms of consulting with all stakeholders involved. And I can't say this enough. And it's not just consultation by way of window dressing it. It's meaningful consultation so that we can understand what are the issues afoot, and that we can now go back to make informed decisions, just not making a decision. The whole decision-making process needs to be a bit more inclusive. As we've always been seeing here, some decisions that are being made currently don't have the inclusion of 100% of the persons there, and then we drop the ball along the way. So this is a part of me that I bring to the table here currently. I am married, as you very well know, my wife, right? And I'm here now again after 12 years of military service to give more service to this our nation, and to see us to get to that goal, of making Guyana the place that everybody wants to come and live. I must add that it's a very trying time for our Guyanese. We're here in a time of COVID. We're here in a time in which we see flooding occurring. We're in a time in which we see the cost of living going up, and many of the other societal ills starting to show their ugly faces.
Yes.
So here is where we put aside personalities, we put aside a lot of things for the greater good of the people. And this is why I'm here, and I'm eager to continue along the same line.
Well, thank you very much, Danny. I know the follow-up question that I have, that I really wanted to pose to you, you answered it, in some respect there. But I will still attempt to get something differently from you, right, where this particular question is concerned. I know prior to your entrance into politics, you served as an officer in the Ghana Defense Force. But can you say to our viewers what motivated Daniel Seeram to get involved in mainstream politics?
Well, mainstream politics, I would have always been attracted since as a young boy growing up. I can recall the first time I understood the role of the president and the cabinet, and I was somewhat always attracted to the decision makers. I always knew for a fact that I would have gotten into politics, just not when I would have gotten into politics.
Yes.
Right. So it was a goal. It was always at the back of my mind, even studying. Coming through the primary education, secondary education, and tertiary education, that, and then I made the decision finally, after watching the APNU AFC government, led by David Arthur Granger, doing such a great job.
Yes.
Right. They brought Mr. Granger and his team.
Yes.
Brought so many great things out. The changes were different. The atmosphere was different. The whole feel of the country was different.
Yes.
The people were more cohesive in terms of coming together. We didn't have this division, as though you draw a line in the sand and say you can't cross it. You would have found things would have been a bit more fair in terms of getting business was more fair. Now, after growing up, and I would have worked with successive governments before, as I saw the leadership of David Granger and his cabinet and all of the great things that were happening, and I was a part of this in the background,
Yes.
right, building roads and drilling of water wells and so forth, and I wanted to get more part of it, and hence I made the decision to throw in my cap and to join the People's National Congress and to further serve the people of Guyana in a more meaningful capacity.
Okay, good. Thank you very much. So, viewers, you've just heard from Daniel Seeram and what would have motivated him into mainstream politics. And, he would have mentioned that he is a proud member of the People's National Congress Reform, and we welcome more like you, Daniel. Daniel, the next issue I want us to touch a bit on has to do with the pandemic. It is 1 year, probably 4 months, if my memory serves me accurate, since the pandemic is with us. Our first COVID case was discovered on the 11th of March 2020. And I like to remind viewers, I like to remind our people what the APNU AFC administration, under the leadership of Mr. David Arthur Granger as the president, and also Honorable Valda Lawrence, who served as the former Minister of Public Health. And you know that we had the COVID under control, even after the first discovery on March the 11th. Then we went into 5 months, with, the whole post-elections situation. When we left government on the 2nd of August 2020, our total debt was 21. Today marks 342 days since the People's Progressive Party Civic was installed, and the total debt is 486. 486. When the APNUFC was in government, they confirmed cases was 474. To date, it is 20,757. So the question I want to throw out to you, from August, or let's say between March to August 2020, as against August 2020 to July 2021, how do you see the two administrations handling of the COVID situation?
Well, I could tell you about both actually, because the first case of COVID arrived in Guyana on March the 5th, actually. The first positive test was on the 10th of March 2020, and the first death was on 11th of March 2020. I can tell you this because the first COVID-19 task force, I was invited to be a member of it as a technical appointment. We were monitoring it, and then we decided, based on the advice of the WHO and a couple of the major stakeholders internationally, right, that curfew and somewhat lockdown was needed at the time. What we find is that the COVID-19 virus, the pandemic, and I'm not a medical person here, but just what we were told, how it is spread is spread basically on a person-to-person basis, as we all are very educated now, but at that point in time, we were now getting the information in. So we decided that in order to stop the spread of this pandemic was to decrease the amount of persons in movement, basically in movement as in public transportation, the public offices, and so forth. Most of them were put on a shift system or some other system in which decrease most of the persons who would have been at work actually being there presently. We would have had more virtual interactions, virtual meetings, and so on. That is how we were able to keep the numbers down from spreading. With regards to the deaths, we would find that, over the time, because we didn't have a lot of persons in rotation, the virus wasn't spreading, so persons who were more vulnerable would have not been infected during the period that we would have governed and handled COVID. Post August 2020, after the new government would have taken over, they would have relaxed most of the measures that we would have put in place. And this is public knowledge, because I'm one of the advocates at the beginning of this year here, after we would have seen the numbers increasing. I would have publicly called out, and I would have made it very clear at the National COVID Task Force that we needed a lockdown. Right? I even told them, along with other regional chairpersons, that if you don't want to lock down the country, we will lock down the regions, but we needed the approval from central government to lock down the regions because of how the laws were instituted in the National Gazette for the COVID-19 measures. So after August 2020, everything was relaxed. Indoor dining and a couple other things would have recommenced, and the persons would have been allowed to be in movement. Public transportation would have went back to 100% of persons being there. Persons were called out back at the public offices to be back there on 100%. And a couple of the stronger measures that we would have had in place in terms of the curfew would have been relaxed in having a curfew that is now 10:30, in which we had a 6 o'clock curfew before. Right? Those are just some points to highlight of how to contrast the difference in handling of COVID. And then the numbers would have elevated, of course. You have more persons in movement, you have more persons in rotation. That means it's more likely to spread. And then we have persons coming in and out of the country. As you know, that on us we had a lockdown.
Yes. Yes.
COVID didn't originate in Guyana, it was imported through our port of entry at the airport. So that is how we handled it compared to how the current government is handling it, and that gives an understanding to how we had different figures at that point in time. The beginning of this year, we would have heard that there would have been a new variant of COVID.
Yes.
This would have been circulating somewhat between February and March, in which at the time of hearing it, as any responsible regional chairpersons, we would have brought it to the national level, and then I would have asked for it to, for somewhat of a lockdown, right? We would have discussed it at the level of the COVID task force, and this was not to infringe on the economic processes that were going on, but it was more to be caring to the people, because we didn't want a lot of persons to go in, be infected. We were looking at the medical facilities in terms of the capacities of the medical facilities, and some of them were being overwhelmed. But as you see, as the vaccines came,
Yes.
most persons became a bit more comforted by the vaccine, and that campaign would have rolled out in terms of persons being vaccinated, in which we know that internationally that is the main goal of the world right now, to have everybody properly vaccinated, that is. Right? So after we would have rolled out the vaccine campaigns, we would have noted that the numbers weren't, they're about to increasing, but we still have deaths ongoing, and then we still have now other variants coming in, because other countries which are seeing the variants, we have persons traveling from those countries to come to Guyana, and it's still a point of concern as it is. I mean, we still have, in order to come into Guyana, you have to have certain tests done. In order to leave Guyana to go to countries, you have certain tests done. So we have some amount of oversight there, but then we still have a porous border, right, with Brazil and Venezuela, in which we have persons still coming into Guyana illegally. So it's a concern, because we don't know what they're bringing. We don't know, they're entering illegally. So this is just to outline again some of the handlings of COVID, because under David Granger's administration, right, we would have been manning those borders a bit more rigidly during the COVID time in order to not allow persons to come in. Right? We already knew what was the point of origin of the first case, and was just to do the tracing and keep it under control. After August 2020, well, it was harder to trace persons because everyone was in rotation. Everyone was back in movement. And that, I think, is the main difference. The David Granger-led administration would have been a bit more rigid in terms of handling COVID, ensuring that it wasn't spread to all of the population, and doing the proper tracing by isolating the one group that had it and so. And that would have worked out good for 5 months. But afterwards, it's hard to do that contact tracing, because everybody is everywhere. It's until you hear certain things. For example, and not to get detailed in it, but you had instances in which persons attended family gatherings, weddings, and so forth. Then you hear persons from the same event would have passed away after because of COVID, and then persons who would have attended the events would have been tested positive for COVID after. Right? So, I mean, I have spoken on it there, and it is a concern. It is something we raise at the National COVID Task Force, in which we're looking at ways. Not everything that I would say is always taken, but I make it my duty to attend the meetings, to register my concerns with the task force on behalf of the people of Region 4. Right? And I always tell persons that even though the measures may not be there, that they still have to be responsible and respectable to each other. So wear your mask, practice social distancing, right? Sanitize as much as possible, right? And ensure you go and get the vaccines, right? Not everyone would want to take the vaccines or so. I mean, I was one of the persons that didn't have quite the knowledge for the vaccines. However, after doing much research and so, we understood that the vaccines is the way to get into some sort of normalcy, right? And also as a boost for the body. So we went out to get the proper vaccines at the time, right? And now I'm fully vaccinated. Most of my family is fully vaccinated, and I implore all Guyanese of all walks to go and get properly vaccinated, right? And that is the only way we can move past this. Some of the decisions made, I don't agree with it. I think that they could have been made better in terms of the handling of COVID. And then we would have had less numbers now, and we would have had probably less deaths, right? But however, we are in this current posture that we are in. So the only thing that we can do, I always preach it, to be a responsible leader. We tell the general public, right, to adhere to the measures that they are. If you don't have to be someplace, just please stay home, right? And we're all in this together. And the only way that we can get through it is if we adhere to the measures that they are. And I think that all of the measures have been publicized in all the media that you can probably find. And also at the regional level, we have started the various outreaches that we have with the vaccine campaigns, and both on the East Bank, the East Coast, and the Georgetown sector also have their vaccine sites. And we just implore persons, if you see the symptoms, you call the hotlines or you call your closest medical provider.
Yes.
And let us get through this together. I mean, we can beat it as much as possible between the governments, but we're already in a state here right now.
Yeah.
So we have to come out or come back from where we are currently.
Good. Well said, Danny. And I want to touch on 2 points. One, I do agree with you that now we're seeing a whole different attitude or atmosphere in our nation as it regards to the whole handling or the management of COVID by this regime. And I am aware of persons coming into Guyana from the United States of America. Perhaps they would complete a form there at the port of entry. But apparently, when on completion of the forms, there is no follow-up. So persons just complete the forms. The forms are left at a desk at the port of entry, and people, gone their merry way. So nobody from the health sector is checking in with these persons who came in on a daily basis to, ensure that they're home, probably quarantining for the 14 days, and they're not out partying or, else places wherever they would want to go. So I don't know if you have been receiving complaints as the regional chairman for Region 4, similar to what I have just shared.
Well, I haven't received any such reports because the standard is when you come in, you have to have a PCR test, a negative PCR test, and then you fill out, of course, the normal documentation procedure for entry into Guyana. I'm not sure if we have a system or if the health system has any system in place to track anybody, right? And we have the current posture of the government is to move away from quarantine. Unless you are showing symptoms or you have COVID, then you self-quarantine.
Exactly.
Right? But I haven't received any reports of persons who would have actually came into Guyana with a positive or proven positive on arrival to Guyana at the port of entry, because that would be quite alarming at this point in time. But I can make a follow-up with the health department in that regard, right? And in following up with persons, but many persons now are traveling to Guyana when they arrive here, right, from their country and our country. They fit the criteria for international travel of both host nations. So we, again, I haven't received any major concerns or reports there.
All right. Well, I don't know if the system, would have changed from the time I got such a report to now. right? So I'm actually just, sharing with the viewers and yourself what was actually told to me. I got a friend came in from the UK, and I think her first port of entry was that in Barbados. And she had to quarantine there for about 14 days at a hotel. When she arrived here in Guyana, the young lady probably at the desk asked whether you're COVID positive or negative. So, all right, just complete this form and then you can leave. So she was alarmed to see that we have a loose system here and not one as rigid as what Barbados has. So I don't know if
other
if it has
countries
changed
would
from
have put
the-
in place stricter measures in terms of entering into the countries, right? But however, at this point in time, I think our posture is different.
Yes, yes. All right. Before I move off from COVID, the other issue I wanna pick your thoughts on is this with the two no confidence motions that the leader of the opposition laid there in the National Assembly. And one is against the Minister of Health, Dr. Frank Anthony, and the other has to do with Minister Robson, Home Affairs Minister. But since we're talking COVID, then we can link the motion against Frank Anthony to this brief discussion. How do you feel about the motion? Do you think it was a positive direction taken by the leader of the opposition?
Well, the leader of the opposition, in his wisdom, along with his other opposition members of parliament, would have had sufficient evidence, right, before they laid this motion before the minister. Right, the outcome, all of us here are looking to the outcome of that motion.
Exactly.
Right, and the leader of the opposition is a very competent leader, and he would not make claims or just go to file a motion because of anything. So we are all looking forward to hearing what is going on. As you know, that some issues within the health industry within Guyana and the Ministry of Health have been making their rounds in the newspaper and on social media, right? So it would be good of any responsible opposition, right, to raise these issues of concern, as the issues of concern would be representing some of the views of the population.
Exactly.
Right, so we do look forward and to see the outcome of these motions and to see what would be debated or said with this here. I think the nation is awaiting to see exactly what it is, because not everyone is comfortable or okay with the current handling of the COVID situation. So I'm guessing that the answers that the questions that the leader of the opposition has weren't answered correctly, or some of them need a bit more backing up. And we look forward to those results.
Thank you very much. And for you viewers and listeners out there, I just want to say to you that the motions against the two ministers, Frank and Robson, in my view, they're timely. More so the one against Frank Anthony, because as you rightfully put, that there are still a number of unanswered questions from the government, and specifically the Minister of Health, who is yet to provide the needed answers, not only to the leader of the opposition or his 30 members, but also to the general populace, because we had the issue with the 200,000 batches of Sputnik, how these vaccines were actually procured. And on June the 14th, we were able, when we were considering a supplementary, it was a supplementary and a contingency sums through financial papers, then we were able to be made aware as to how these vaccines were actually procured, right? So though we may not have the numbers for a successful passage of the no confidence motions against these two ministers. What I do know is that the evidence, the merit of the debates will produce a whole lot of things that the Guyanese are yet to be made aware of. So let us see where that goes. Daniel, I now want to turn our attention to your portfolio and your responsibility as the chairman for the Demerara Mahaica region, commonly known to many of us as Region Number 4. I know you took the oath of office, it might have been on the 26th of October 2020. So, yes, 2020. So, can you explain to our viewers what are, some of the roles and functions as a regional chairman?
The role and function as regional chairman is to govern as the regional head of the Regional Democratic Council, which is a representation of the people of the region. The region itself is split into two. Mm-hmm. The actual regional council, which is made up of the regional councillors,
yes,
right, and a clerk, which is the regional executive officer. Then it is made up of the other half, which is the regional administration, which is headed by the regional executive officer, in which carries out the regional administration carries out the instructions or the wishes of the council. The council is a policy making and decision making body of the region, in which I'm the head of that council. We decide on certain issues. Of course, we take the national policies into consideration, and then we would debate, vote, just as Parliament would do at the level of the Regional Democratic Council on certain issues. So there we have two tiers there, yes, all operating under one roof. The region itself is governed fiscally in five areas: education, delivery, health services,
public works.
Public works, agriculture, and the admin and finance. Right? So those are the areas in which we get our money from the government from, and those are the areas in which we plan projects based on the feedback that we get from the populace of what is needed within the region to better them. We place a lot of emphasis over the couple months on developing the region, both infrastructurally and to also have a good eye over on the education side and the health side of things. As you know, all areas are on the front burner right now. The COVID hasn't left anywhere to make any mistakes. So from the policies derived from the various ministries, that is how we govern the various areas in the region. And we ensure that the implementation of these policies are there. We ensure that that the logistics are there in a timely manner, and that everyone gets basically a piece of everything that we can offer at the region.
Yes. All right. So can you say to us how your programs have been progressing thus far? What is your budget for 2021? How much we already have into the year? How much you would have expended thus far? How the projects are moving? So perhaps you can.
I don't have the direct figures, right? But we did get north of $9 billion for the region.
9
right?
billion.
9 billion, in which
as again. So what was the previous sums?
It was an increase. It was an increase from under the coalition. Not a very significant increase, but it was an increase from under the coalition. As you know, that the region, in its budgets, we pay all of the workers within the region, all of the teachers, all of the nurses, yes, all of the headmistresses. We provide all of the security for all government buildings within the regions, along with the maintenance of the schools, the health centers, all of the government buildings, right? And those are the areas that we put a lot of monies into. Not only the region spans from Mahaica, yes, until Mobliso, right? Just to give persons the wide scope of what is happening here, right? We place a lot of emphasis on drainage and irrigation. As you know, it's not the best as yet, but the Demerara-Mahaica region would have been one of the regions least affected by the current flooding that is going on. I thank all the regional stakeholders for this, because we would have been in contact since I would have been elected to office and improving certain areas. Of course, we need more improvements, but the monitoring and of these cocos and sluices, the pumps and so forth, that is what we have been placing most emphasis on. Maintenance of them also, we're placing a lot of emphasis on. As the region alone, we don't control all the drainage infrastructures.
Yes.
So this is why it's very important that we speak across to all agencies, whether it be the NDIA, Gaisuku, the Water Users Association, all of the NDCs, to ensure that we have timely feedback if any issues happen in these areas. Likewise, for the schools and the medical centers, and so we do visits. Some of the councillors at the committee levels of the region would go out and do their visits, give us these feedbacks. Residents themselves give us these feedback as well in terms of what needs improving, what doesn't need improving, right? But all of these areas do come with their own challenges. It is very challenging, right? The first budget under my tenure at the RDC, the 2021 budget actually, right? The councillors we didn't have much of an input, right? Someone dealt with it very haphazardly, and we weren't given the right basically to have most of the projects that were there, right? Nevertheless, we took what was allotted to the region, and we're looking at that now. We had our tendering process between February to April, between March to April. Most of those initial tenders would have went out, and we are waiting the evaluation of those contracts and then the awarding of those contracts, and then we'll be going out to visit the various projects, whether they fall under whichever program head they fall.
Yeah.
We will go through there, but because of the flood situation, because of some of the setbacks that we are having, the rate of projects haven't been as we wanted them to be.
Okay.
Right, we've been having some delays. These delays, I mean, none of these delays, basically, we didn't see them coming. However, at the region, I believe in being a bit more proactive,
yes,
rather than being reactive to the situation. So you'll find me very more intimately involved in all aspects of the governance.
Okay, good. But then again, I know, as you explained, that it is quite challenging at this time to get majority of the programs or the projects off because of the whole flooding situation. But can you say which area in Region 4, right, that never had probably 100%, let's say, infrastructural development, and might be getting such for the first time? Off of your head, can you say what you intend to do in
I can't say
Buxton,
that
what you will be doing
we have
in Monrepo and those things?
Well, this is the thing, Ms. Ferguson. For those areas, those specific areas, right, they already have a local authority area. They're the NDCs, right? So the vision that we have for those areas would be in consultation with the local authority leaders within those areas as to what they want to develop.
Okay.
Right. The style of governance that we have at the regions is not forcing something on the communities that they don't want.
Okay,
right.
good.
Initially, as I said, that the role of us here now, as a council chairman and everyone, is to consult with these areas and consult with these local authority leaders and their councils to find out what they want happening in their area, what development would be more beneficial. So this is not under my tenure at the region. We won't be building any white elephants or anything like that, or things that won't be needed.
Yes.
Right. What we look to do is get the bang for the buck. Of course, we look for transparency, and we look to ensure that what we put into the communities is meaningful, is beneficial, right, to
Yes,
all
all
of the community, not just to one aspect of the community is there. So when we, and I have a long list of requests from the various local authority areas as to what they want to be developed with in their areas, and I'm pleased to say that most of them are roads. Right? Everyone is saying everyone is saying that they want upgrades of roads.
Yes.
So we're looking to fit them in. For us, we are saying we're going to look to see if we can do them, or if we will have to ask the Ministry of Works
Yes.
for assistance to do them. But again, this is not. Daniel Seeram's vision for the region is total development for all communities.
Okay.
Right? And that vision for the region moving forward, right? Yes, I have strategic goals that I have for the individual program areas, but all of these goals that we have for development of the region, right, must have a grassroots base, must have going to the communities, getting these feedback as to what they want. Then we come back now, right, as a council, and we discuss the priorities, because we don't have finances like that, so we will prioritize the projects and get them out and get them done.
Okay, good. Well, Danny, I know we're coming down to program time, but I want to get 2 other or 3 other issues in before we bring the curtains finally down, and I'm going to capture them in one breath. One is that I would like for you to say to our viewers, that Demerara Mahaica region is predominantly, coalition strength or coalition control. So one, since your ascension to chairmanship, how has your relationship with central government has been? 2 is that we had issues with the whole COVID cash grant distribution. What role was the region, what role the region played in ensuring that there was equity, there was fairness in the distribution of the COVID grant in Demerara Mahaica region? And the last point is that I would want us to touch on the flooding situation. Perhaps you can give us an update on the flooding situation. We know for a fact that hampers were being distributed by central government through the CDC. You will let us know what role the region would have played in ensuring that there was fairness. I guess by now that the National Assembly approved of a $10 billion, which will go towards relief, towards helping flood victims. Whether in Hamper, they said they weren't going to give any cash, right? But it would go towards Hamper and also infrastructural repairs. So you can share that.
Yes, just to reiterate, the APNUFC won the region outright. We are the governing body within the Demerara Mahaica region number 4, right? And currently, of course, we have our challenges sometimes with dealing with central government, right? The cooperation is not always there, right? However, myself and my council, we look past that in order to bring the greater good for the people,
Yes.
right? As we've said since we would have took office last year, that we don't look forward to playing petty politics with anybody, especially when the lives and livelihood of people are at stake. So we cooperate where it's necessary in the goal to further development, and for in certain important areas where the livelihood of persons are at stake, then we definitely go there. With regards to the COVID cash grant, I say this over and over again. The Regional Democratic Council had no role to play in giving out of these COVID cash grants. What I was told is that the monies for the COVID cash grant right, came through the regions, but however, that is all. The actual distribution was handled by central government, right? They would have sent their person that they would have employed for these COVID cash grants, and they would have sent the people into the communities to go and actually distribute it. We had no direct oversight of these monies. We had no oversight of who got what or whatever,
Yes.
right? I was peeved about it because I said that that is not the way that we that it should be governed in terms of giving out a cash grant of such a nature, right? Because not everybody would get, and we clearly saw that many persons did not receive their COVID cash grant, right? Which was their entitlement as a Guyanese, right? I said in the very initial, even before it started, the cash grants, I said that the best way for this money to get to everybody in a timely manner would be for central government to pass it to the regions, and the regions then pass it down to the local authorities. Now, just as smooth as it was going there, the local authorities on issuing saying that we have these cash grants would come, and the local authority leaders and the councils there, they know exactly who live within the communities. They know exactly how many families are in the communities.
Yes.
They have these information on record. They could have supplied this information to the region supplied it to central government, so you know exactly how much money that you needed, not estimating how much money that you want. And then they would have passed it back, and then we would have had all of the checks and balances to go out and get these monies out. And even before last year, no, October, everyone would have gotten their monies already.
Yes.
Now we find that only now we're in a state of giving persons with the pink slip, right? In which you're not hearing much about it. You just just got an announcement, and we didn't even get any formal documentation at the level of the region stating that this is what is happening here. I saw this in the news.
Yes.
So I'm glad that persons with the pink slips are getting it, but I hope that all the persons who have pink slips would be getting their cash grant. Right. So I always say that the handling of giving out liquid cash, there was not a lot of checks and balances there. And I think that a lot of persons would have been disenfranchised from getting their duly entitled cash grants because of those checks and balances there. There are 3 tiers of government, and if we use those 3 tiers of government and the structures of government that is in place, then everyone can get anything that they need readily in Guyana, right? But it was a very bad idea to take liquid cash to give to persons to go into community house to house to give them. It actually put an additional cost to the cash grant, because then you would have to pay for transportation, you have to pay for food, you have to pay for all of these things, in which the local authority area could have covered those. Could have covered that and got now these cash grants very quickly, very timely.
Exactly.
Right? So, this is something that I speak at length, right? Because there was a logical, structured way to handle it, right? But much is left to be desired as to why it was done in this particular way.
Okay, so can you provide us with the flood updates? And then
Yes.
I have one more question.
Flooding in Region 4, we would have had many of the farms going down. That's something that we're looking into. Of course, one of our recommendations for farmers and other persons within industries who would have suffered from the flooding would be a financial compensation for them for their losses there. We would have had significant flooding within the region in the Cane Grove area, in which we would have been monitoring both the creeks, the Mica Creeks, and the other area. We are monitoring the Conservancy also, which is at a high level, but it's manageable right now. Right? We did look at the low East Coast and the upper East Coast had flood areas in flood-prone areas, low-lying areas within flood-prone areas, which would have had additional waters. I would have visited the Buxton community and a couple other communities to see the extent.
The level.
It was very abnormal to see the level that the water was at. Right? coming down to Georgetown area, not to get too much into the municipalities work,
Yes.
but I live here and we did have an abnormal amount of water. I mean, we never, in 5 years of government, we didn't
Yes.
see this, and now we're
Yes.
seeing it again,
Yes.
right? On the East Bank, of course, some of the developing communities, the residential communities would have suffered because their drainage infrastructures are not totally completed, so those areas would have suffered. The Mocha Barnwell area, of
Yes,
course, those
the
portions
farming
there
areas, yeah.
would have suffered tremendously in the Barnwell farming area, right? And I must take this time also to say kudos to the persons in the Mocha area, because they have one of the most fantastic farmers market, and I know we both up there quite a few
Yes,
times,
yes.
honorable member, but just to say that it's a great initiative and it's something that we need to look forward to doing more often in the communities, and other communities I'll be visiting, asking them to do the same thing,
Yeah.
right? Patterning off of Mocha.
Good.
Right.
And what about the distribution of hampers?
Well, we
because
started the initial distribution of hampers at the level of the region, right?
Is it being done in a fair and equitable
We
way?
started it based on the needs of the areas,
Okay.
right? Nationally, it was understood that we weren't hit the hardest in Region 4.
Okay.
Right?
Yeah.
However, after an assessment, myself and the mayor would have written formally to be for a number of relief hampers for as per village.
Yes.
Right? Some of them we got a small amount in the beginning, but after a time we didn't get anything else from the CDC, right? And I would have made direct contact with the PM, asking him on this, and I'm still awaiting that feedback to know when we would get additional supplies for persons who are affected or would have been affected by the flooding. You see, the thing is about flooding, apart from the loss, there's a health concern there that we need to bridge. And if we could get out at least those health hampers to persons in Georgetown, right? At least those hampers to persons in Georgetown, it can aid them in terms of cleaning the areas.
Yes.
And so, I mean, in this time and day we drive around, you can't tell the difference between road and
a
trench,
drain.
right? So you could imagine what type of water is going into your yards now. So
Yes.
that's a major concern for us here, right?
All right, good. Well, I wish you all the best, and I trust that you'll get a response sooner than later from
Yes.
the Honorable Prime Minister. I know we have just a few minutes remaining, but the last question I want to get in here is that I know for a fact that sometime last week, it might have been July the 1st, if my memory serves me accurate, you can correct me here. You met with the U.S. Ambassador, Miss Sarah Lynch, and based on the write-up I read, was basically, to discuss project or developmental priorities, health, infrastructure. So would you like to take two minutes or so?
Yes,
just to
on the
apprise us
29th
on
of
that?
June, I met with the U.S. Ambassador, Ms. Sarah Lynch, and also the Canadian High Commissioner, Mr. Borman,
Okay.
on the same day. And at both meetings, we had both meetings. The agendas were for development of the Demotion region. We would have discussed areas relating to education, health, of course, infrastructure, drainage and irrigation, agriculture. I also brought out to them areas for youth empowerment, for disaster risk management, training, and so forth, and also urban development and economic development and planning. Right? We do look forward to working with these stakeholders. This is a part of one of the initiatives that I brought out at the region so that we can meet with all stakeholders. As I said before, this is not only a Daniel Seeram thing governing the region, but we give everyone a chance to say what they can do, how they can support, and we look forward to more engagements with those diplomatic missions here. Right? We look forward to fostering more ties with those nations at the level of governance, and then going forward, some of the areas that we discussed, starting those projects and helping the people. It's creating capacity, building
Build
capacity that we're looking forward to with going forward. I want to prepare the Demerara Mahaica region, which is the economic hub, which is the heart and soul of Guyana, right, for the prosperity that it's going to have in the coming years. And everyone in Region 4 must be in a position to access the assistance, the necessary assistance, whether it be financially, whether it be in terms of education and training, right, for the new industries that we'll have here and for the new development that we'll have here.
Okay. Daniel, it was indeed a pleasure and a privilege having you here on Facing the Nation with me today. Thank you very much for sharing, not only with me, but also with our viewers, what is happening in the Demerara Mahaica region. And I do want to take this opportunity to wish you all the best in your tenure as chairman of the region. Ladies and gentlemen, viewers, this is all the time we have here on Facing the Nation. It was indeed an honor having you joining in today's conversation with us today. I do look forward to you joining us next Friday for another edition of Facing the Nation with the leader of the opposition. But before I take my final leave, let me make this appeal to you publicly and to say that COVID is real. The onus is on all of us to be responsible. Wear your mask, wash your hands, and watch your 6 feet apart distances. Once again, thank you for joining us here on CNN Channel 6, Facing the Nation. I do look forward to you joining us next week. May you have an enjoyable weekend. May your weekend be a blessed one, and may God continue to bless us. May God continue to bless our nation. Thank you.